Hi everyone, I'm Ashleigh Myerscough, Senior Performance Coach here at Seven Geese, and today I'm going to answer the question of how can we keep the connection in our remote one-on-ones. If one-on-ones and building a one-on-ones culture is new to your organization in this remote world that we're currently in, I encourage you to check out our previous video by Robert St. Jacques on how to implement a one-on-one culture remotely. Then pop back and check out this video. Right now, we're missing out on a lot of those social, situational, and nonverbal cues that tend to make our one-on-ones really effective. Right now, this can be making our one-on-ones feel like more of a checkbox activity than an actual connection point between managers and team members. So let's see what we can do about that. Right now, one of the situational cues that's missing from our remote one-on-ones is that opportunity to walk to that meeting room with your team member. As managers, usually we would pop by our team member's desk and say, "Are you ready?" and then walk with them to the office that we're going to have our meeting in. This provides manager with a little bit of a lens into how that team member might be showing up for the one-on-one. Were they in a flow state beforehand? Were they having an in-depth conversation with another coworker? Were they challenged by an activity they were working on? All of those little pre-one-on-one activities influence how our team member shows up in our one-on-one. And we're missing some of that context in our remote one-on-ones right now. So tip number one is to make small talk at the beginning of your one-on-ones. Ask your team member, do they have their coffee or tea? Have they had a chance for a bio break? And what were they working on right before? Doing this will allow that context switch to happen for them, just like that physical walk from their desk to the meeting room did previously. Now, the next situational cue that we're missing out on is the physical room that we used to have our one-on-ones in. Most often, we would walk into that meeting room for our one-on-ones with just a pad and paper or your computer. This would naturally signal to our team members that that next 45 minutes to an hour was dedicated to them. If you're like me, right now you've got a million tabs open, you've been multitasking, you've got notifications coming in from email, Slack, other communication tools. That causes for some distraction in our remote one-on-ones. So tip number two is to bring only what you need for your one-on-one into your remote one-on-one. So this means turning off your notifications, closing out all those tabs that you won't need for the next 45 minutes, and sharing that you've done that with your team member. So they really feel that they've got your undivided attention for the next 45 minutes. This will also help you context switch to make sure you're really present in that one-on-one with your team member. Acknowledging this takes that nonverbal and situational cue and makes it a verbal acknowledgement. So this is a great step towards building a little more connection in that one-on-one. Now, the third situational and nonverbal cues that we're missing out on right now is that actually in the moment we get to see how engaged or uncomfortable a team member may be with a piece of feedback or discussion that we're having. Team members will tend to lean in or lean away, start to fidget, move in their seats, or take notes, depending upon if they're engaged and excited or a little reserved and hesitant about what we're talking about. Since we only get a perspective from the waist up right now, make sure that you're asking your team member and giving them space to share how that piece of feedback or discussion is resonating with them. So tip number three is to make the nonverbal cues verbal. So directly ask your team member, how is that sitting with you? And let them have the space to reflect on that. Oftentimes, it can take a moment or two for us to really do a gut check to see, does that actually sit right with me? So rather than just getting the, yeah, that makes sense from your team member, give them a moment to reflect. Make sure what you were sharing with them and discussing actually landed the way you intended it to, and then unpack it if it didn't. This will help make your team member feel like you're really there to unpack something with them rather than it being that checkbox activity. So those three tips are bringing only what you need for your one-on-one meeting into your meeting, having some small talk at the start of it to help with that context switching, and make some of those non-verbal cues into verbal cues. For more ideas and to see how we do this at Seven Geese using Seven Geese, reach out and check out some of our resources in this video's description.